Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Outliers YouTube channel and podcast series and our program, Get to Know. I'm your host, DP Lyle, and I'm here with my partner in crime, Kathleen Antrim.
Thanks, Doug. It's great to be here. And today we have a really interesting author to join us. His name is Robert T. Kelley, and that's an EY at the end, so that when you look him up, you can find him. Robert, welcome to Get to Know.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm pleased to be here.
Well, we love having you here, and we want to hear all about you. And one of the things that I'd like to start with is your childhood.
Oh, okay. We'll go all the way back.
We're going to go all the way back. And what I want to know is whether or not you feel your childhood influenced you into becoming a writer, whether you were an introverted child, did you read a lot? Were you an athlete? Were you outgoing? Did you have imaginary friends? We really like to hear about those.
I did not have imaginary friends. I'm kind of sad to say now. I was a voracious reader as a child. I literally was the kid who the librarians would scold for taking out too many books. I read everything I could get my hands on. I remember reading my brother's college, intro to lit summary. I was just like, anything I could read, I would read. And it put in me the desire to be a writer one day. And it took a lot longer to get there than I expected. I had a successful career, a long and very successful career that was very consuming, and it just didn't give me the space to be able to write, and I didn't give myself permission to be able to write. But yeah, I think my interest in literature, both high literature and basically everything out there from history to biography, I just consumed all of it. And it was a not so hidden dream of mine always to become a published author, which I'm just about to be.
That's so exciting. So what I want to know is, so what pulled the trigger now? How did you get there now?
Well, a couple of things. One, I retired. I had started a business with a partner, and we sold that in 2018. And that gave me the mental bandwidth to be able to, frankly, give myself permission to do the hard work to become a writer. It's really easy to, jot some stuff down in a notebook. It's really hard to look at it and say, that's not good enough. And that combination of giving myself permission and having the mental space to do it really let me take what had been kind of a dream project and get serious about it. And so I went to conferences, I took master classes, I edited and edited and edited until I thought it was done, sent it out to agents. Over 50 of them looked at it, nobody took it, which told me it was not done. Went back, did it again, and landed a press.
That's cool.
I have a similar story. I mean, I was practicing medicine for all these years, cardiology, and I was 45 before I grew up in the South telling stories, and I could always tell a story, but writing a story was a different animal. And I always said that when I retired, I would do that. But I was about 45, still working, seemed like a million hours a week. But I said, if not now, when? And so sat down and started writing. I did the same thing. I read all the writing books. I went to conferences. I took some classes at UCI here in Southern California, but the same thing, exactly the same thing. It's just finding the bandwidth to get your head into that space. So when you made that jump, what was the first steps you took? I mean, did you actually set up a writing space and say, okay, this is where I'm going next?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I actually just blogged about this. I blog with a group of crime writers here in Maine. And my blog last week was this very thing, was just thinking back through the process of how I got here. And, I think what I did was I looked hard at what other people were doing. And, it can be really dispiriting when you hear other writers' stories until you kind of change your mindset and you say, okay, maybe they got lucky, or maybe they just worked really hard and luck found them, fortune favors the prepared mind kind of thing. And I began to think that was the case. And so I said, okay, I will set out to figure out what I need to do. And it didn't mean I knew what to do. And in fact, in the beginning, I didn't. I thought a particular piece of prose was ready when it was not. And I sought out people who could give me advice. Continued reading voraciously, but now reading with more intent. Looking at a book I really like and say, why does this work? What did this author do well? How do I repeat that? Doing the thing that, people talk about, taking a book I really like and writing an outline of it and saying, how did this proceed? And then figuring out, can I do that myself? Also, frankly, reading books of writing advice that I then outgrew and said, no, this is too formulaic. I want a little more surprise in my writing. So
exactly,
becoming intentional about it is not something you just decide to do. You have to. I'm a very beginner musician, which is also something I wanted to do my whole life. And what I'm talking to my cello teacher about lately is that, like, he'll give me a piece of advice and I'm like, and then a month later I'm like, oh, when you told me to do this thing and how I bow the cello, now I get it. Can you show me again? Because now it matters. I actually have the context for it. And that was very much my journey in writing, was that you just keep doing it. And in the blog posting I did for Maine Crime Writers last week, I went back and looked, and I have over 50 discrete drafts of this novel. And I know that's not even all of them, because a lot of times I would throw stuff away. And I just had to keep hammering at it until I got the skills to be able to say, this works, this is good, this doesn't work, and I either know how to fix it or I need to learn how to fix it.
Yeah, I had 27 drafts of my first novel, and so that's the learning process.
Yeah.
And you approached it the right way. But you're right, writing books are great, and they're all about the craft, and they give you like the nuts and bolts. But you can understand all of that stuff. It's kind of like knowing harmonics and waveforms and all that. But to play the piano, you got to play the piano. It's the same way with writing. You got to sit down and write. As Bryce Courtney says, it takes bum glue. Glue your bum to the chair and write. That's
so true. Yeah,
exactly.
So true.
So you were in IT.
Was.
Your career was in IT, and that kind of led us to your debut novel that's coming up. And it deals with IT.
It does indeed.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So the novel basically, it takes place in 1990. So this is a few years after I got my mechanical engineering degree. And thank you. That's the cover.
Yeah, great cover.
When I was in school was this really interesting moment, because it was the end of the Cold War and really the beginning of the internet. So I was a really early internet user. So I was on what became the internet in the late 80s. So this is before there were browsers. It was all really specialized knowledge. Even emailing required like knowing where servers were and how to get to them, across the world. And it was fun. I really enjoyed it. I was good with technology and made a good career of it. But also that moment somehow just struck me as really interesting, because there were experts, but there were also a lot of really interesting amateurs. And in fact, in the early internet, basically everybody was an amateur, even if they were one of the engineers who helped design it, because they were trying to figure out what you do with this tool. And, the word hacker, which we now think of in a pejorative sense, then was not at all. The term actually comes from MIT, and it referred to the railroad club. And they would talk about hacking, meaning just like putting stuff together and seeing if it worked. And it was a really cool culture. And I got to actually watch that culture in that moment. There were technology now kind of lost to time called Usenet, which were bulletin boards. Mm-hmm. And they were shared worldwide. And you could just hang out with people who knew this arcane set of knowledge. And hearkening back to that moment, which was a moment of great innocence, I think I said recently in a correspondence with somebody, like, this was the moment when "don't be evil" could be said without like a giggle. That people really believed that this could be this transformative technology, and that naivete really interested me, because of course, technology, like anything else that has power, is easily abused. And that became sort of the origin of the novel.
Yeah, back then it was mainly used by the government and universities and stuff.
That's
and
right. It was
the public had no access. And then, well, whoa, AOL popped up.
Oh yeah.
And Netscape. I still miss Netscape.
That's the other thing. There's a fun nostalgia to this.
Exactly.
Because and it's funny. I was just speaking with a friend who's one of my early readers, and he lived in Boston. The novel's set in Boston and Cambridge. And the novel opens with somebody getting off the number 66 bus in Alston, and he's like, "Oh my God, I remember I used to take the number 66." So that's the other part of the nostalgia too for me, is also recovering a moment in Boston that's now gone.
Well, tell us about this story. I mean, where did the
Yes.
idea come from, and what's this thing about?
Well, I'm going to try to do this without spoilers, but there's a technology that's central to the novel, that's based on reality. I'll tell the real story. I'll leave the novels for surprise. But there was a computer researcher on the West Coast who realized that technology was changing so fast that keeping computers safe, keeping them secure, was becoming a full-time job, and nobody was great at it. So he designed a tool that would look for vulnerabilities in computers on a network and then report those vulnerabilities so that you could go fix them. Now we have antivirus software that does this kind of stuff for us, but that didn't exist yet. And he was fired from his job for building this, for releasing this, because people thought, oh my God, he's giving like bad hackers a toolkit to go out there and take over the world. And there was this kind of funny like paranoia in that moment. So what I did was I took that story and thought about, well, what if a nefarious person did in fact decide to do that, and what would happen? And of course, I set it in Boston, so I'm like thinking of, what are all the possible terrible things I can do to my protagonist? And it's like, well, Soviet Union still exists, got some of that. Irish mob's still a problem, got some of that. Of course, she's breaking the law, so the FBI gets involved. There's some of that. And trying to figure out how somebody basically extricates themselves from this perfect storm of both good and bad actors trying to figure out, what she's really doing, and is she causing trouble?
I can't wait to read it. I mean, so Robert, tell us about the book, when it's going to come out, where our viewers can get it, and where they can learn more about you.
Absolutely. Book comes out October 28th. So next week. You can get it on all the major outlets. It's on Amazon, Bookshop. It's at Barnes and Noble, and it's coming out from High Frequency Press, a relatively new press that some friends of mine started this year in Maine, and have a lot of really interesting co-authors in this cohort. And if folks want to learn more about it, they can find me and the book at www.roberttkelley.com.
That's wonderful.
Excellent.
Well, it's fabulous to have you on, and we cannot wait to see what your next project's gonna be. I don't know. First day with the new mouths, having a hard time. And Doug, I'll throw it back to you.
Well, thanks, Rob, for being here. We really appreciate it. Fascinating story, not only about you, but about the book. I can't wait to read it too. So it's coming out on the 28th, everybody. So go buy the book at Robert T. Kelley with an EY.com. And until then, we'll be back, as you know, with other interviews here at the Outliers YouTube and podcast series. And until then, keep reading, keep writing, keep having fun, and try not to get caught.
Thank you all so much.